Justin, go ahead. Justin.
Hey, guys. Good morning. Happy Friday.
up?
Thanks for taking my call.
Hey.
Did you guys see Hunter Henry's post-game interview when he was standing on the field when he went to the desk last night?
No.
So he, they're asking how the win feels, and he was like, oh, yeah, we desperately needed a win. We desperately needed that. And then, I just thought it was kind of interesting that he would say that. I mean, I kind of get it. They're definitely desperate for a win, but I was like, you wouldn't be, too revealing in that aspect. And then he was also really pumping Bailey Zappe up. So, I mean, maybe we're seeing a little tide turn in the locker room. And then Zappe also said when he was on the desk with the TNF crew, he was saying how, I'm looking forward to, using this for the next 4 weeks and kind of getting better. So maybe that's like a hint to come if he's going to play over Mac the rest of the season.
Oh, I think Mac Jones's season ended with that touchdown pass to Hunter Henry.
Which one? Yeah.
The one, the just rope that he threw down the sideline. I was like, my initial reaction was like, okay, like that's probably it for Mac's 2023. Because, and look, like I don't blame any of the players for saying we desperately needed that. If you have ever been around a bad NFL team at this time of year, those locker rooms are like freaking graveyards. I mean, you guys are beat up. They have nothing left to play for. It's get me to the end of the season.
It's like that. I've been around. I was the play-by-play guy for a hockey team that won 19 out of 80 games.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it was eliminated by like Thanksgiving. It's like there's no chance we're making the playoffs. That was the longest year of my life. It's like, how do you there's no way to get yourself up for a game at some point. It's not fun anymore.
Yeah, and so the fact that the guys, I mean, I look at like somebody like Jabril Peppers who has to be frustrated, right? Because like he's been in the pros for 7 years and has finally got himself in a position where he's playing really well. He's playing the best ball of his career, and he's had an awesome year. And it's for what? You know what I mean?
Right. It's for his next contract is what it's for.
So, and you get that, but it's like, I'm sure like there's some feeling for guys like that who've had good years. Duggar's had a good year. Barmore's had a good year where it's like.
I mean, Duggar's playing for his next contract.
Did
real well against Watt.
That's different. Playing for
different
yourself and your money is a lot different feeling than playing for a team that's contending.
That's different. But that's a lot different than like, Wallach, like what you're talking about is big picture. And yes, that exists. No question. But I think for each individual guy, there's getting yourself through the day to day. And it becomes drudgery when you're playing for nothing, and there's a frustration with it. And look, I said it last week, like the end of the practice week, and we talked about this on the midday show yesterday. They had a bad week of practice last week leading into the Charger game.
Yeah.
And there were signs all over the place that the defense was fed up with the offense. And so to get this kind of spark from the offense and to like see the actual, like a quarterback making plays and like to be in a position where they didn't have this, like just this gorilla on their back, like the defense that have this gorilla on their back where it's like, we have to carry the team to the finish line of every game to even have a chance,
Sure, it's a ray of sunshine, but they played what we now know is, especially with Mitch Trubisky at quarterback, a horrendous, offensively challenged team. They still have to play Kansas City. We can debate whether or not what shape Buffalo's going to be in when they play them in a few weeks, but it's a ray of sunshine. It was on national TV. Everyone saw them win. They're not as bad as everyone thought they were, but at the same time, everything after they're going to play Kansas City and probably get slapped around. It comes back down to you brought it up. How do you get to the end of this season? You get to the end of this season by making sure that every other team in the NFL realizes that you individually are playing well. Mike Onwenu is up for a contract.
Right.
He held his own against T.J. Watt last night. He was on an island for a while. Watt wasn't nearly as devastating as he normally is. They spotlighted it during the broadcast. Onwenu held up by himself at right tackle. Peppers has been fantastic for this team. And you talk about Duggar. Duggar's been really, really good, but he won't be here next year either. Other teams are watching to see if this guy will play well under adverse circumstances, and by and large, they are.
Right.
They're not doing it, to
No, it's not in vain. It's not in vain, but all I'm saying is like the day-to-day existence can be like not good. Like if you're on one of these teams, the day-to-day existence, the going to work every day.
It's a lot more fun to be playing for each other than it is to be just 53 guys who are playing for themselves.
I mean, it's just and I'm just telling you, and it hasn't existed here in a long, long time, where the end of the season is legitimately a death march, and you're walking to the locker room in places like this. These are graveyards at the end.
Early 90s. Early 90s was the last time it was this bad.
And so the release of a night like last night, I get it. Why Hunter Henry would say it's honest. We desperately needed something like this. And, now they get to reset a little bit with the mini bye. And, for the guys in the locker room, I think it really helps.
I think it might have been it was Peppers after the game too was talking about kind of they wanted to win for Bill. He's been taking a lot of heat. They wanted to take some of that off of his shoulders too. Which I'll be honest, I was a little I don't know if I was surprised by it, but it just it seemed odd that they would even admit that or that a player would admit that in public.
There are and Bert has come in here and said this more than once over the last couple of months. There are what kind of percentage? 20% of that locker room's all in all the time. It's convincing the other 80% to go along with you.
It's
the guys that they're talking to, Henry, Wise, David Andrews, the guys they talk to every week, they're part of that 20%.
Right, and it's and again, I think that, and this isn't specific to the Patriots, but it's every locker room in the league, which is the point that I've made, Wallach, which is 80% of the guys in any NFL locker room don't know where they're playing next year. It's just the reality of the league. And it's unique to the NFL. Baseball's not like that. Hockey's not like that. Basketball's not like that. In football, 80% of the guys in every locker room do not know where they're playing next year. So they do not give a crap about your 3-year plan. They don't give a crap where you're drafting next year. They don't give a crap what the team's going to look like in 2025. They are worried about their own careers, which they should be. Because the team will throw them out on a rail as soon as they're useless to that team. So it becomes, at the end of a year like this, a lot of times guys just become independent contractors. And when that happens, when you get to that point where the team goals are out the window and everybody sees the writing on the wall, it becomes that much harder to have a night like they had last night. So for guys who are in, like Wallach said, it's satisfying when you get one of those.
All right, let's take a call because we're getting phone calls. This is very exciting. The Patriots have won a game. And we are getting phone calls.
Zappe fever is striking the region again.
Ryan made a point on Twitter last night. He's like, I can't wait to get the phone call saying that you don't need to draft the quarterback. Zappe's the man.
Right.
I mean, we did. It's not an elite quarterback play. I mean, he had a nice first half, but he's
an actual fully functioning half by the offense.
He did. He played well, and he moved well in the pocket, and he can run. And
you know what? When you're crawling through the desert and you're starving.
Dude, they scored on their first possession. They had a 35-yard completion. I mean, it's good. Steve, go ahead.
Hey guys, Fred, I love the show. First off, and I'm really happy that you're staying around.
Thank you, buddy. Thank you.
The big problem with Mac is his reputation is gone. What he did last year with hurting players and acting like a bitch when he got hurt, with guys in locker rooms. Once you're known as a pussy, you'll always be known as a pussy. You could beat up the strongest guy, jack the most amount of weights. You will always be known as a pussy. It's like the male equivalent of being known as a whore.
All right. I understand your point, but you're throwing around a lot of terminology.
We're putting all our cards on the table.
I appreciate your sentiment. All right. So, was Mac Jones considered a pussy? Is he referring to when he hurt his ankle and he had to look on his face?
This is the thing. Literally, did you see what happened to Joe Burrow when he hurt his wrist? He was crying.
Yeah.
Guys get hurt. Big, tough linemen when they hurt themselves and they think their season is over or maybe their career might be altered.
Careful. That's a guy who went to Ohio State once. Be careful.
Graduate, actually.
An Ohio Player of the Year.
He's a graduate.
High school Ohio Player of the Year.
Yeah, he is a Buckeye alum.
Of course.
But I think a Joe Burrow crying is a little different than what we saw from Joe. It's oh my God, my season's over. Right? We saw that with God, there was someone who.
Well, you see it all the time.
Yeah, but you see it
I mean,
like
you
when
see it all
when
the
a guy
time.
like Jalen Phillips. Jalen, when he got hurt in that Dolphins-Jets game, and you
Yes.
saw it again on Hard Knocks.
Hard
like,
Knocks, yeah.
He's crying. He's not crying because of the pain. He's crying because, oh my God,
This is a career
what is
altering
this gonna
thing.
what's this gonna mean for my career? That's a little different than what we saw with Matt going down those steps.
How do you know?
So wait,
he doesn't. He might think, you know what? My season's over. My ankle's got it. I'm going to have surgery.
But I don't think
all that stuff's going through his head.
I don't think like the rap on Mac that he wasn't tough though.
No, I don't.
I don't think it was.
Yeah,
Like, I don't think that was the problem.
Was that just something? Always thought the thing with his ankle was a construct of the media.
I think like I actually think like if there's a bigger complaint on Mac internally there, it's about accountability. It's about that's what it's not about toughness. Like I don't think that there was ever any huge question on Mac Jones's toughness.
Okay,
The guy took a beating behind this offensive line and kept getting up.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, he was wincing in pain. I don't know. But what do I know? I don't know what's going on. I know that a lot of these guys are crying also because the amount of chemicals in their system are coming out.
A lot of crying in football.
I also think
do you see Lila? Watch like a quick YouTube documentary on Alzado's behavior on the field and tell me that these guys are not anything.
I mean, to be fair, too, if we're going to call Mac what we called, if we're going to call Mac what that guy called Mac, he did like kind of provoke fights with Brian Burns and Sauce Gardner.
Yeah,
if he was one, he probably wouldn't be doing it.
Well, I mean,
that's more damaging to the reputation than the other thing.
I mean,
but that doesn't make you a you know what.
Yeah,
It makes you something else.
Well, I don't know if Sauce Gardner's not the most physically intimidating person.
Brian Burns, I wouldn't mess with Brian Burns.
No, but Sauce Gardner not like a hit. I mean, but neither did Deion Sanders, but he doesn't like to hit. Yeah, so you think that Mac Jones? Do you think his reputation around the league is ruined, or do you think people can sympathize with him because of how poorly he was handled?
I think the better Bailey Zappi plays, the worse it looks for Mac Jones.
Sure,
certainly for obvious reasons, and I think the more of a I get like you guys saw it. There was a spark there.
There was. Yeah, absolutely.
There was like offense looked different.
You mentioned it earlier, like, kind of you alluded to the decision-making process with Zappe. It just Mac gets into this like brain lock where it doesn't feel like he can make a decision. He ends up taking sacks and ends up taking more hits. Last night against pretty good defense, 2 sacks, I think there were 2 other hits. Zappe gets the ball out faster. He just feels like
he's running
kind
the
of pacing-wise, he knows what he's
running
doing.
The offense, which was like, and you guys remember me saying this last year was part of the whole thing last year with Matt and Joe was, well, Bailey's like the difference is like Mac's not buying in and Bailey's doing what we're telling him to do. Like that was part of it, right? Like was that the way we're trying to teach the offense. You can argue whether we're right or wrong. But part of it is that like he's doing what we're telling him to do, which is why it looks the way it does versus the way it looks with Mac.
He takes coaching better.
And
that's
this
all it
year,
is.
And look, like I think this is part of the player buy-in too. When I asked people last week was the first week that Bailey was in there and getting the reps with the ones, and for those who don't know, like Mac Jones last week was Justin Herbert in practice. He was a scout team quarterback. He was not getting reps with the ones.
Right.
And so this was the first time they'd seen Bailey as in the context of being the starter. And I'd mentioned earlier in the year how during practice you would see Mac making the same mistakes that were coming up in the game and defensive players pointing it out and saying, no, you can't get away with that. No, you can't do this. And you'd see some of the, like a lot of the deficiencies you saw in games were showing up in practice.
Okay.
The biggest thing they said for like with Bailey Zappi, when I asked like, how did it look last week? The answer I got was decent. It looked okay. The best thing I can say for Bailey is that he's doing what he's supposed to be doing.